I never meant to keep my success a secret. It just happened that way. When I was growing up in Singapore, my parents taught me the importance of hard work and education. My dad always said, "Knowledge is something nobody can take from you." As he worked long hours driving a taxi to pay for my studies, my mom worked 2 jobs, and together, they made sure I had everything I needed. Their hard work paid off, and I graduated at the top of my class in finance. I quickly landed a job at one of Asia's biggest banks, and by the age of 28, I became the youngest division head in the bank's history, managing over $50 billion in corporate loans. However, very few people knew this side of me. I met James at a small cafe where I spent my weekends working just to stay grounded. One rainy morning, he came in, ordered a latte, and smiled when I made a little heart in the foam. "This is the best coffee I've had in months," he said. He came back every weekend after that, and we talked about everything: his work as an architect, his dreams of designing sustainable buildings, and his close relationship with his family. I looked forward to our talks because he saw me for who I was, not what I owned. When he asked me out, I said yes without hesitation. Our first date was at a simple hawker center where we shared plates of food and laughed about nothing in particular. I fell in love with his kindness, integrity, and how he treated everyone with respect, no matter their status. Before our first dinner with his family, James warned me, "My family is a bit traditional. They can be judgmental about status and careers." I reassured him, saying, "Don't worry, I can handle it." But I wasn't ready for what came next. James's father, Richard, was a self-made real estate tycoon who dominated every room he entered. His wife, Helen, was equally intimidating in her designer clothes. James's sister, Victoria, was just like their mother and gave me a dismissive look when I mentioned working at a cafe. During dinner, Richard's voice boomed, "James, I thought you said she went to university?" James replied, "She did, Dad." Richard interrupted, clearly not putting it to good use. "In this family, we believe in ambition and excellence, not serving coffee." I could see James's face turning red, but he stayed silent. Helen, touching her pearl necklace, was about to deliver a sharp comment. "Maybe you could help Emily find a more suitable job. The cleaning company we use is always hiring." Victoria snickered and added, "At least she has health insurance." I stayed calm, saying, "I enjoy my current work, but thank you for your concern." The rest of the dinner was filled with subtle digs and patronizing advice. James apologized a lot on the drive home, promising that they would come around and just needed time to get to know me. But they didn't. Over the next year, as James and I grew closer, his family's disapproval only got worse. Every family gathering became harder for me. Richard always reminded everyone of my humble background. Helen made sure to seat me far from important guests, and Victoria openly suggested that James find someone more suitable. When James proposed, their reaction was as expected. Richard exploded, "A cafe worker? Have you lost your mind?" James stood his ground, saying, "Dad, I love her." Richard shot back, "Love won't keep our family's reputation intact. If you marry her, don't expect any help from me." But James chose me, and we had a small, beautiful wedding without his family. Months passed. I continued working at the cafe on weekends, finding peace in the simple work while managing huge business deals during the week. James respected my wish to keep my career private, understanding that I wanted to be loved for who I was, not my position. Then came the annual Chin family reunion. James insisted, "We have to go, they're still family." I agreed, hoping that time had softened their hearts. I was wrong to think things had changed. The reunion was held at Richard's mansion, a huge estate that screamed wealth. As soon as we arrived, I felt the usual judgment. I heard Victoria's voice from across the garden, "Oh, the cafe girl still hasn't found a real job." Richard quickly gathered everyone for his annual family speech, with champagne flowing as he boasted about their family's success. Then he noticed us. "Ah, James, come tell everyone about your new project," he said, looking right past me. "Your wife can serve drinks, it's what she's good at," he added, and laughter spread through the crowd. James opened his mouth to say something, but before he could, there was a sudden disturbance near the house. Richard's secretary came rushing out, looking worried. "Mr. Chen, urgent call from the bank." Richard waved her off. "Not now, we're celebrating. It's about the emergency loans, they've been denied." Richard's smile faded. "Impossible. I spoke with the division head yesterday," he said, but the secretary replied, "The new CEO is reviewing all the loans personally. They're requesting a meeting tomorrow." I felt my phone vibrate. It was my secretary calling, and I knew what this was about. Richard's company had been flagged for suspicious accounting, and as the CEO of the corporate banking division, I had ordered a full audit. The timing couldn't have been more perfect. I excused myself and quietly stepped away from the crowd to take the call. "Ma'am," my secretary whispered, "the audit shows worse financials than we thought. There's evidence of systematic misrepresentation of assets." I told her to send me the files, and I would review them that night. When I returned, Richard was in full crisis mode. His face, usually smug, was now full of barely hidden panic as he barked orders into his phone. Helen stood nearby, nervously twisting her hands. Victoria came up to me with a fake sympathetic tone. "Looks like Daddy's company is having some problems. Not that you'd understand business matters." I smiled politely and said, "No, thank you, but I do have a question. How's your position at your father's company?" She proudly said, "I'm Executive Vice President of Operations." "Interesting," I said, "and what exactly do you do?" Her smile faltered. "I oversee things, important things, like the shell companies in the Cayman Islands." Victoria's glass slipped from her hand and shattered on the marble floor. Several people turned to look at us. "I don't know what you're talking about," she hissed. "The ones hiding your father's debt?" I asked. "Or the inflated property valuations?" Before she could reply, Richard's voice boomed across the garden. "Everyone, party's over. Family emergency." The guests began to leave. Richard pulled James aside and said, "Son, I need your help. The bank is being unreasonable. Your architecture firm has good relationships with other banks, right?" James looked uneasy and replied, "Dad, we're just a small firm. We don't deal with those kinds of loans." Richard exploded. "Useless, just like your choice of wife. If I lose this company, it's your fault for bringing bad luck into this family." That was enough for me. I stepped forward, holding my phone. "Mr. Chen, I believe we have a meeting tomorrow at 9 a.m. He barely looked at me. "This doesn't concern you, coffee girl." "Actually, it does," I said calmly, opening my banking app to show my executive profile. "I'm the CEO. You'll be meeting me." The silence was deafening. Richard's face showed confusion, disbelief, and horror. Helen's pearl necklace fell to the ground. Victoria looked like she was about to faint. Richard stammered, "Emily Chen, CEO of Corporate Banking Division, Singapore United Bank?" I nodded and said, "Your loan applications crossed my desk last week. The irregularities were a concern." James stared at me, mouth open. "Emily," I explained softly, "all this time, I wanted to be loved for who I am, not what I own. You gave me that gift. Your family, not so much." Richard suddenly straightened up, his business instincts kicking in. "Well, this is wonderful news. We're all family here. Surely we can work something out." "Family?" I echoed. "Like when you called me a gold digger at our wedding reception? Or when you told your business partners that James married beneath his station?" Helen stepped forward, arms open. "Darling, we were just protecting our son. Surely you understand." "I understand perfectly," I said. "You judged me, humiliated me, and treated me like dirt because you thought I was beneath you. Now you want my help?" Victoria tried to smooth things over. "Emily, sweetie, we were just teasing. It was all in good fun." I turned to James and asked, "Did you know about your sister's role in the company?" He shook his head. "She said she was handling operations. She's been helping your father hide debt and inflate assets. The audit shows years of financial manipulation." Richard's face turned purple. "Now see here, you can't just—" "I can and I will," I interrupted. "Tomorrow's meeting isn't about loans. It's about a fraud investigation." The color drained from Richard's face. "You wouldn't dare." "Family?" I laughed softly. "Let me share some wisdom from my father, the taxi driver you mocked at my wedding. He taught me that true family supports you, believes in you, and loves you regardless of your status. You've done none of those things." I took James's hand. "The authorities will be contacting you tomorrow. I suggest you get your lawyers ready." As we turned to leave, Helen called out desperately, "Wait, what about Victoria? She was just following orders." I paused at the door and said, "Actions have consequences, Helen. Victoria chose to be part of the fraud. She'll face the same investigation as everyone else." The drive home was quiet. Finally, James spoke. "Why didn't you tell me? Would you have treated me differently if you knew?" I asked. He thought for a moment. "No, I fell in love with you, not your job." "That's why I fell in love with you too," I said, squeezing his hand. "I'm sorry for keeping this from you. I just needed to know our love was real." "What happens now?" he asked. I sighed. "Your father's company will be investigated. With the evidence we have, there will likely be criminal charges." Victoria too, if she's implicated. And us? He asked. That depends. Can you handle being married to a woman who makes more than your entire family combined? I asked. James laughed, breaking the tension. I think I can manage, but no more secrets. No more secrets, I promised. The next morning, Richard arrived at my office exactly at 9 a.m. Surrounded by his lawyers. Gone was the arrogant tycoon. In his place was a man who finally realized he wasn't the most powerful person in the room. I slid the audit report across my desk. The audit revealed fraud over 5 years, falsified valuations, hidden debts, shell companies. It's all here. Richard's lawyer started to speak, but I cut him off. The evidence has already been sent to the authorities. Richard leaned forward. Emily, please think about what this will do to the family name. Family name? I replied, like when you told everyone I was a gold digger? Before he could respond, my secretary interrupted. Ma'am, the police are here. What followed was a media circus. Chen Development CEO arrested for fraud appeared on the front pages. Victoria was taken into custody next, clutching her designer handbag as officers led her away. Helen had a very public breakdown at the country club. James stood by me through it all, though I knew it hurt him to see his family fall apart. They did this to themselves, he said one evening as we watched the news. You just exposed the truth. Weeks turned into months. The investigation revealed more than I had expected. Richard had been running a complex scheme using inflated property values to get loans, then funneling the money through shell companies. Victoria had been involved in the fraud too, with her executive position being just a cover. The trial was quick. Richard and Victoria were both sentenced to prison, 8 years for him, 5 for her. Helen didn't face criminal charges, but she lost everything in asset forfeitures. One day, as the autumn sun painted Singapore's gardens golden, Helen showed up at my office. Helen came into my office one day, looking different. She wore simple cotton clothes instead of designer ones, and she started, I know I have no right to be here. I need to say something. I motioned for her to continue. I was wrong about you, so terribly wrong, she said, tears filling her eyes. We judged you because we thought wealth and status were everything. Now, I'm alone, living in a small apartment and working as a sales clerk. I finally understand. Character matters more than money. You were kind to us, even when we were cruel. You could have destroyed us, but you let the law take its course. That's real class. I looked at her face and saw real remorse for the first time. What do you want, Helen? A chance, not to be closed off. I know I don't deserve it, but I want to apologize to you and James and try to be better. 6 months later, we hosted a small dinner party. Helen came, bringing homemade dumplings, a skill she had learned in her new life. She was different now, humbler, more genuine. James was healing too, visiting his father and sister in prison and working through years of family problems. As for me, I still kept my weekend shifts at the cafe, not because I needed to hide anymore, but because I loved the simplicity of making someone's day better with a perfect cup of coffee. One morning, a young woman came in looking defeated. I asked, rough day? As I drew a heart in her latte foam. My boyfriend's parents think I'm not good enough, she sighed. Wrong background, wrong job. I smiled, remembering where my own journey had begun. Let me tell you a story about family pride and what really matters in the end. Life has a way of teaching us its most important lessons. Sometimes, it takes losing everything to understand what truly matters. Richard and Victoria learned this in prison. Helen learned it through humility, and I learned that being true to yourself is worth more than all the wealth in the world. James and I are expecting our first child. We decided to name her Grace, a reminder that sometimes the hardest situations deserve a measure of mercy. Helen is excited to be a grandmother, and even Richard, through his prison letters, seems to be reflecting on the kind of legacy he wants to leave. The cafe still stands, a humble reminder of where our story began. Sometimes, customers recognize me, the banking CEO who serves coffee on weekends. They often ask why I still do it. My answer is simple: every cup of coffee is a chance to make someone's day better. And in the end, isn't that what really matters? They usually smile, whether they understand or not. But I know my truth. Success isn't about power, revenge, or proving others wrong. It's about staying true to yourself, showing kindness even when it's not deserved, and remembering that everyone, even those who hurt us, deserves a chance at redemption. As I write this, I'm sitting in the cafe, watching the sunrise paint the city in shades of hope. James will join me soon, as he does every weekend. Helen might stop by with her dumplings. Life isn't perfect, but it's real. rich with lessons learned. Sometimes, when I'm making coffee or reviewing billion-dollar deals, I think about my father's words, knowledge is the one thing nobody can take from you. He was right, but he missed something important: integrity, compassion, and the courage to be yourself. Those are things nobody can take either.